Hi, this is Sheila with Conscious Conversation Central, and today is Monday, January the 7th, 2019, and I'm with my gal pals, BZ Rieger and Lisa Flamino Rush. Ladies.
Hello.
So we got this particular nudge from you on January 3rd, BZ, January 3rd, 2019. And I was kind of excited that because I had just seen a movie trailer that talks about this. So I was feeling that energetic a lot. And that is your title for this was The Singularity Pulls Excalibur's Sword from the Stone. And I am going to put a link to the trailer in the show more section of this video because like I said, I was so excited when I saw it. First of all, I saw it earlier in the day. Jasmine, Lisa's daughter, was still home from college, and Albert was home because it was still just after the holidays and all that, and so we all saw it and everybody got excited. Actually, it's The Kid Who Would Be King. And so, I don't know, it just seemed to me like, I've also been following Magenta Pixie, and she's talked a lot about this energetic. And you just said a little bit briefly before we even began recording, and that I hadn't even considered in that particular way. So, please talk to us about why were you nudged to include this, or if you can share that would be awesome.
Well, the way I'm trying to think of the clearest way to describe it. So the way oftentimes nudges come in all the time around various things and things to do, but a lot of times nudges will come in series and in packets, and they're a combination of, actually I was nudged to do a whole conversation just on this to kind of piece it out for other people. So I'll just do a little bit of this. It's interesting. You're a note from myself to myself to actually get on what I was, to do.
I see.
It was in between meetings this morning, and and I was kind of glossing over it, but I can see it's put back on there. Anyways, they come in series, and they're a combination of a packet landing, landing in, some unpacking, sometimes to then beget more nudges, and they come in series. So on this particular day, so 16 nudges came in the space of an hour, and this was 13 on the list. So in other words, in the series that came through. And why is that relevant? Well, because I'm explaining how in this particular day it came through, but oftentimes and this happens for everyone, and they just notice it, play with it in different ways. But when they come in, you could say they're puzzle pieces in some effects. They put some of the puzzle pieces together and click and unlock other codexes that have always been in with you, or are a key to something. So it's if you think of a lock and a key, if you think of a decryption code and an algorithm, so there's various different ways that they come in. and or already there, and then they facilitate, in an old style movie theater, you can't watch the movie until someone turns the light on the projector, right? You can run the film and all that kind of stuff, but until you turn the light on, you can't project that onto the screen.
Right.
So that's a good metaphor. So they come in series, and why following nudges is really helpful, and not just to wait or brush it off or whatever, because they beget more. There's part of the proving. So anyways, this came in one of those series, and it was unlocking different things around it, and part of it is around playing with the awareness for beings in a metaphoric and literal way, that you are the stuff of legends, and you are the stuff of historic fiction, and you are the stuff of magical and mystical parables, and they're beyond just books. Oftentimes someone who loves books will say that the story comes alive for them. Well, the story has always been alive, and when you meet it and you come into connection with it, and you are subject to one another, and you then step back into, is one way to say it, or for the very first time come into that co-creation energetic envelope that your unique signature meets that, and this is your storyline, if that makes sense. So that's just a little bit of a highlights of how, to answer your question, of how this one and why this one particular one came in.
Well, when you, I hadn't thought of it quite in the, when you titled it the Singularity Pulls, because, well, first I have to back it up for a second, because it's come in twice to say, and when you were speaking earlier about the packets of information that come in, the phrase decoder, I've used, because I know that's really what I'm doing, is decoding things.
That's one of the things you're doing, yeah.
Right. Well, as
it relates to the packets, that's one of the things you're doing.
Right. Well, it's on all sorts of levels, even ones I don't quite comprehend all the way through. And what I mean by that, and I think, okay, I got real swirly, so maybe I'm not supposed to, maybe that's not for now, but it's more like a decoder thing as far as I'm concerned about that part. But in the title of this, you spoke of the singularity, which is us. I get that. And pulling the sword from the stone. What part of the metaphor then do you feel that I think I know, but I would like to hear what you.
Well, part of the, it's not part. So in all of the expansion, in all of the consciousness expansion, in all of the frequency, vibrational frequency neighborhoods that we're traveling through, moving through, timeline collapsing in that, in our evolution right this moment, which is not, um, what, a couple million years or 52 million years or whatever. Because hey, we were never here because of that. Just check before the known history, and that would be a better history recipe than the one you've been given. So evolution doesn't work that way. The Darwinistic thing does not work that way. In fact, Darwin, and that's a whole other story, is part of the company line and the cabal and all of that sort.
Well,
But
yeah, I mean, a cursory thing in regards to Darwin that I've always, from the time I was quite young, actually, never quite understood is that he himself, it's always been a theory,
right.
number one, and he himself said that it will only hold until the next theory comes along. I mean, that's not it. It was misquoted quite a bit too. So, but yes, you're right.
Well,
I
all
get
of that is intentional. It's held up in a certain way, and any that try to play with the theory, quote unquote, that's all conspiracy to because it's taken as truth, but it's given as truth, and
yes, it has. But and just
it's
for
taught in
those that might,
school as the gospel.
well, and it is now, of course, finally, and I'm sure that this goes along with part of seeding the consciousness for the truth is that that they're finding that it's never actually ever really been so.
Yeah.
More studies, yeah, more studies show that it's more cooperative than you would even think. It's that cooperative. I mean,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Because that is what is true. That is the true integral part. Anyways, but the Galapagos Islands is a nice place to visit. So what the. So where were we going before I got off on that sidetrack about Darwin?
well, I'm the one that sidetracked you.
Okay.
I'm sorry. You were talking about the singularity. Well, I was wondering about the metaphor of the whole thing, I guess.
Okay. So the singularity is not a metaphor. It could be used as a metaphor, but it is literal, physical, tangible reality. So,
Yeah, because that's what we each are,
well,
right? I
becoming.
mean,
We're becoming.
I gotcha.
So, yes, you're an individual. I don't like this word because this word that's why I rarely, if ever, use it anymore, but in each individual person, except a person is not what one thinks it is, and not at all what one thinks it is. So anyway, so each, I'll use it, each person, yeah, it's an individual person. Each being, which is a much more accurate way, is an individual being. What is occurring, and I'll just go into this briefly because we can do a whole other conversation on that, because it's a huge topic, but what's occurring in the holding, in the imploding of all of you into you, is becoming a cohesive structure within all of your multidimensionality, and the singularity of you is then that trinity, that new creation that comes forth. So the true sovereignty, and not the sovereign oxymoron quasi citizen thingy out there, but the true sovereignty of one is a in its true form, in this, as it relates to the singularity that is coming forth, that cohesive structure that is coming forth of all of your multidimensionality, is way beyond if you were to look at a sovereign, someone, you know, a ruler, a king, and all those kinds of things. It's linear placeholder, but if you take all of those different things and you pull them together and then you put them in all in the multidimensionality way, and then you take in the fact that it's all of that is now in a cohesive structure, and all of that means on all different layers. This is why this is a whole other conversation, on all those different layers, into that which this individual being has become. So just we'll use singularity right here as a placeholder for that. So the singularity goes to the stone to pull Excalibur from the stone. So if you take the different parts of that, and we just played a little bit with the singularity part through stories that you may heard in the you know, in the bardic tradition, and written stories and novels and allegories and all of those kinds of things, you can get a sense of the different parts. So the stone and what it holds, and it can only be pulled by the, you know, the one that is the true heart. And, you know, so look at all those things that are supposedly just stories, and you will realize that it's real and it's living, and we are in the story, and each one of us is in the story, writing the story, co-creating the story, beholding the story, and unfolding the story. Just to give you a little hint of what you're doing, you know, right now. And so when you then go back to the metaphor of the stone, and then drawing Excalibur from it, so you think about, again, the metaphor, the epic tales written about Excalibur and what that brings. So yes, on a linear level, you have some of the touchstones of that. You have the stories and the metaphors and the kind of the mystical traditions and such painted from that. So that gives you a starting place. And then you add in all the multidimensionality of that and the frequential dimensions and structure of that. So now you're starting to see that each component is this. Have you ever seen a chrysanthemum? So when a chrysanthemum flowers, it has many, or a chrysanthemum in, this is actually a good example, a chrysanthemum in fireworks, right? So the chrysanthemum in a firework shoots up, and then it has a big bloom, and then usually more will bloom out of it. And it kind of does a, you know, it's colorful and explodes, and then it does another poof, and more comes out. So go Google, you know, chrysanthemum firework and watch what it does, and you'll again then see the metaphor of what I'm talking about. So the different parts of this all come into that blooming of the metaphor into a cohesive structure that relates to what we are doing, we are evolving into, we are experiencing, we are becoming that singularity. And so in our novel, it's the day that we go to the stone, you know. For some, that day is coming fast approaching. For some, that day is just about here. I'll get to this in a little bit more in a minute. The next iteration of that day is coming forth because one's already had one of those days. And again, remind me, and I'll talk a little bit more about that, because this is the first time they've gone, the ceremony, they go to everybody walks down, and they haven't had that yet. And this is one, this is one unfolding, and then there will be, others. So you know what I'm talking about. When in the Arthurian, in Excalibur, there's this whole processional, and they go to the stone because it's the time, and they're, you're going to see this. They're going, and everybody may try to pull, the sword. You just go up to the sword and try to yank the stone. It doesn't work, kind of. So each of us is writing, co-creating, and unfolding that story. And we are the singularity, and we are in preparation for the honing of it's a honing of all of the totality of us, and as we come in that Trinity, we become the singularity, which can then, place our hand on the hilt of the sword to draw it from the stone, and then become and merge with the energetic frequency, because it's stuff of myths and stories and mystical treatises, but it's also an energetic frequency, which is why it's story and myth and all those other kinds of things, because this is how we bring these fantastical things into circulation, into knowing, because we're revealing the allegories of expansion in a way that can be robed in, garbed in, obfuscated and concealed in a story, myth, that kind of thing, for taking in and kind of ride under the radar, so to say, of a direct revealing of more expanded information to come under the radar of the company line.
It feels to me what you're describing there. It feels like infiltration technique to sneak past the guards at the gate, or the program, so to speak.
Yeah.
This puts me in mind of something William Henry said about Arcanum. He had a show on Gaiam. Well, back when I was watching it was Gaiam TV, called Arcanum. He talked a lot about artworks, ancient artworks and things like that are filled with iconic sacred geometry, even things like that too, that the artists back then depicted things in a manner of helping to do the same thing. It's the same kind of thing, sneak under and um, educate without really educating, so to speak. I mean, it's there. It's a stealth kind of thing. That's
Yes, and you could say again. I want to reiterate. Everything I'm saying is linear placeholders because it's all in accurate way using the language that I have, but it's trying to build a bridge between my language and languaging it so that others who they have the same language, they're just not fully availing themselves of it yet or fluent in it, we'll say. So you're not missing anything. No. Part of my job is to translate in a way that can paint a picture. But anyways, it's also part of the other, so it's under the radar, but it's on both sides,
right?
Because so that's kind of a for some
okay
people.
Now wait a minute, let me back that up a second. What do you mean it's on both sides?
See, I was slipped that one under the radar. So one can kind of easily get the sense of, okay, under the radar of the church back in the day and the iron fist rule of that and all those things. But it's also on the other side of the light, the other side of expansion, all that kind of stuff, because it must slide in, fit within, be in coherence with the non-interference clause and the free will choice clause. So they're
that's kind of where the eyes to see and the ears to hear kind of comes in, doesn't it?
That's part of it, and it's remember there, we had one of those videos where it's that pulsing, that comes through, and
because it's an energetic frequency that's attached to the story, the myth, the allegory, not necessarily the words.
Well, the words are in whatever language, and a lot of it's in Gaelic and all those different things. So the different languages that come through, and the way that the toning, because of the bardic tradition and the toning that comes through in that. Yes, that is very important. It's not the end all, and it's not the first all. It's not the totality. It is the.
There's somebody just asked, what is the bardic tradition, BZ? So would you,
okay. A bard is someone, who's a storyteller, who goes through and would go from village to village, from province to province, from little settlement to settlement. And that was their work. That was how they were fed and given place to sleep and all, various different ways, and they may have a kind of a home base, and then they would go out from that, and it was the oral tradition of some were more in singing, but that was and I'm going to apologize for my killing the word. Now it's gone. I was going to say in Ireland, in Celtic, in the Irish, Old Irish. No, it's gone. It's a singer who that sings the tradition, and this, a bard is more of a storytelling of the tradition. So that's how the Arthurian myth and Excalibur came down through, was stories that were told, and they'd stop at the pub and and they'd have gatherings, and they'd spin a yarn about these different things, and many of the mystic traditions, many of the mysteries of the ages and the wisdom was passed down that way through storytelling because of a couple of reasons, again, for both sides. Okay, so on the one, to come under the radar. Yeah.
No.
To come under the radar of the powers that be at the time. If it wasn't written down and it's coming out, then it's harder to police, it's harder to thwart, it's harder to you can't confiscate what's come into you through a toning and a story and at the pub, because it's not a book to take away.
Right. Once it's in there, it's in there.
Right.
Kind of thing.
So that's on one side. And then on the other side, again, it is because it's in the storytelling, in the storytelling tradition. And these were great, very respected traditions. The one who would I gotta look the name up so I can pronounce it properly, is being the singer, and not just, but song in the tradition, passing down the mystic traditions through the song. And then also the storytelling, we're actually telling the story, the allegories, the parables, all of these kinds of things worked in the other side because it came in a way that, again, was toning. It was a resonance frequency passed through the word, and the word holds power. The spoken word holds much power. If you have any doubt of it, not so many all anymore, but many, and many still, have been held in thrall by the power of the word, intentionally, by the powers that be / were / relinquishing that role. So anyways, it satisfied that on the other side, the non-interference clause and the free will choice part of that, because it was taken in. And so there's always been this balancing act, because it's duality. So on the one hand, you could say there's a push me, pull you, but there's a balancing of those two things, and each being comes forth within that balancing to flower what is the truth of who they are, and their what's true for them can then blossom up. And it may do it in different stages and lead them down one garden path, but yet it's ultimately bringing them to where we are now. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, that's really a beautiful way to put it too. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So let's see, what else have I not? So in pulling Excalibur's, so the sovereignty, which is beyond, however you hold it, you can take it beyond that. So if you already hold it pretty beyond, take that even further, and now you're starting to begin to encapsulate the multidimensionality of it. And what is happening is that sovereignty is turning into the singularity of you and you and you and you, right? That is the being becoming, the triad becoming. And as that metamorphosis, as that transformation, as that evolution in its quantum evolution, comes forth, we each have and meet and come into co-creation with Excalibur. Is there waiting for us to draw it from the sword, that sword from the stone. So there is the moment where that will unfold. There'll be variations on the moment and when the moment is for each being. You can play with coming into connection with, coming into that energetic envelope of subject to one another, so that you can meet, greet, see, and behold Excalibur. But you are moving to the point where you can then draw Excalibur from the stone. And, that's when the singularity that is you, it's like that diamond point flash of light. And I say that on many multiple layers there of using that, painting the word picture that way of the diamond energetic and the flash of light that comes, that you, as the singularity comes into being, and at that point, again, I'm trying to be careful which linear words I use, because some of them have too much sticky stuff in them. But anyways, at that point, so I'll paint this picture. So when you go to the stone and you put your hand on the hilt of the sword, there is that meeting, that connection, that unification, where you become one with the stone, the sword, and which is one with that frequency. And it's, oh, I see, of course. And you are one in toto with the magic of who you are. And that brilliance, you could say, ripples up from Excalibur into you, and you become a light. You alight with all of the brilliance of who you are. And you draw, so you continue that process, that point, and you draw Excalibur from the stone. And as you raise it high, and this again is metaphoric, it is energetic, and it is literal. You now have that sword that is your, how do I say this? It is your instrument of true justice, not planet Earth justice. True justice that comes through, that illuminates all for you, that is the balancing of those scales. And this is really an inaccurate word, but I'll go with it because it's a kind of good place. So the reparations of that, of the unfolding of that justice, and you see it. So you one way, Sheila, to use the phrase you were talking about a bit ago, of the eyes to see and the ears to hear, you meet, and it's, oh, And it's like nothing that you have seen before. Now, someone just asked, I think I have a hint of this answer because you mentioned it, to remind you to say it later. So I guess they're reminding me, you're eternal, right? So you go through these moments in different times. There's a big one. There are many on this planet who have gone through this moment of meeting, beholding, and as I talked about, that whole connection and of pulling Excalibur from the stone already. I remember the majesticness and the magic of it when I went through that point. What, 20 some odd years ago? I don't remember exact number of years, but I am on the verge of doing my next one because we keep shifting and changing, because part of my whole agreement, my whole unfolding was to be, you could say a way shower and a warrior of light as well. So I needed to go through that iteration of this moment. Then, again, it isn't linear, but then to travel that path, my path, to come to the moment where I am now undoing it again for the very first time, in this moment. Does that make sense?
I think so. Because it's not one and done, for one thing.
Right.
Is why you're saying that, right? I mean, that's partly what I got from that, is that again, this is wholly inaccurate too, but there's levels of consciousness I'm finding for myself.
Yeah, wholly inaccurate, but you kind of sort of got the gist. I'm agreeing with you, but I'm also putting all those caveats so that.
Well, that's why that's why I said it the way I said it too, because
there are no levels. But yeah, that's a good kind of terribly
there really aren't
placeholder.
There really aren't. But that's there's almost
maybe layers.
Okay, layers. Yeah, layers, levels,
yes.
veil. I see now why veils are often actually used as well, because they're
frequency and the bandwidth. So that's part of that other thing I mentioned off camera, where I need a pictorial to do that. So I'll do that. And so I'm a very different being. Well, before I drew Excalibur, and remember, this is beyond just the allegory of that, although that's very literal. It's a frequency. So I am a very different, right this moment, a very different being than just before I drew that. Then, again, that's like a linear time placeholder. It doesn't work that way, but that's a good place.
Right.
And in these moments, there, maybe a better way, without using time, to say in these wisps of the mystical mists before the moments. It's not whole moments. It's like, just, as you see the mists in the morning clear of the rise as you're walking up to so I'm walking the path, and I'm just about at the stone to do it again, because you'll start to we can go into this in more detail in another conversation, but you'll start to feel and have an awareness of and an intimate connection and knowing of as you're just, so the processional is going down the path to the meta where the stone is. And, you may be, I know for myself, I'm, maybe 3 paces from greeting the stone again and reaching to pull it out. So in this moment now, at 3 paces away from that, right? And where I will stop and mark the moment and make that last, in that moment, jump to do that, I will be very different. Does that see what I'm saying? That so there's a
yes.
I'm being nudged really strongly to make that point there. From a linear perspective, it's more event driven, but from a linear perspective, for me personally, my sense is that it's before the next full moon.
Okay, that's interesting. This has come in a couple of times, and I don't know how familiar you are with tarot. But as you were describing pulling Excalibur from the stone, and you were holding your sword up, it came in that you also spoke of justice. I saw the Magician card. In tarot, the Magician card is the archetype of one who has all the tools to accomplish all that is necessary or needed or desired, for that matter. And the magician possesses them all.
Yes.
So for me, that's the energetic that I felt that you were describing.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So we are all you could say magicians in training. That's not accurate, but it's a piece of it. We already are the magician. We already are the sorcerer. And I'm not talking in any way of anything that is, well, it depends on each individual, but I'm not painting it from, the evil sorcerer. Although if that's your choice and that is where your choice of service to self, service to others, and that frequency which you hold, it's a choice,
Right. Well, we have,
and those who choose it, well, that's a pretty cool thing. But, again, it's been so maligned, and so wrapped in the mantle of the religion, and all of that is heretic and all that kind of stuff. And the great irony of that, unfolding as we speak, and in extremely demonstrable household heard and known names, you will see that that has not been the truth of what is the heretic nature of it. It will be reversed, but that's a whole other conversation.
Right. No, you're right. It is a whole other conversation, but one I would like to get to, as we've kind of touched on that before. I personally feel that magic overall has gotten a bad rap, and on purpose,
Yeah.
because that is the yeah, we've talked about that before, and I just wrote it down because I'd like to have a more in-depth
Yeah.
conversation about that in general. Kind of goes along with the other topic of in regards to abracadabra, so maybe we can do that one soon.
Yeah.
Because we are magic. That's the big thing that
Yes.
is the biggest reason that it's been corrupted in the way that it has been, because we already are magic.
Yes, and those who have already been, I hate that, but been is, anyways, I'll get over it. From the linear timeline, those who have already drawn Excalibur from the stone, to walk their path and come forth and give of themselves and be in that mission, however you want to hold it, and it's that unfolding and transformation for themselves as well, because that's ultimately what it's all about. There aren't sides, but again, you have different perspectives on that. As far as the expansion and expanded aperture that one holds in consciousness, it's all about consciousness. Okay, but in the parable about there's sides and you go to the stones. So those who have already gone and undrawn that, that was so that path can be walked, and that flowering, that unfolding, that the reveal can be transmitted, made available, been revealed in again in that same way, the same balance of under the radar on the one side, and holding in, be true to the non-interference clause and the free will. And so that magic has blossomed, and those that have already done that, you said we are magic, yes, and as we behold that within ourselves, as we become subject to one another, and we have the full consciousness and the flowering of that, there is, again, linear placeholder, terror and much chagrin at that, from that controller base. And so that would be helpful to understand, why chemtrails, why vax, why, all these different things, because all the others walking that path to their singularity, to their drawing Excalibur from the stone, is unstoppable. It can be postponable, and there are, that has occurred in different ways for we'll say en masse, not for all, because we wouldn't be here, and we wouldn't have beings in the en masse energeticness without those that kept going, and that got through, and and had the flowering and beholding and all that kind of stuff. So as we're in these moments now, and as we and with this last click, as each one has done before, it's kind of like on the Richter scale, that each one is not just simply the next step. It is an exponential magnification, amplification, and rippling of those energies that, the waves come in and carry, all to the next expanded level and then some. So that is, on the one hand, one could say terrifying, and on the other hand, met with joyful relief. And I'm talking, all within the same side.
I was going to say, it can happen all within the same being.
Yeah, well, this is true. but I was talking a little broader, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know, I felt led to share that too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely, the same being. And in collectives of the, so yeah, I mean, you can, since we're multidimensional, anything that we say just, kind of go like this and so anyways, that's a few wisps of the mist as we walk on the path to draw Excalibur from the stone.
And of course that it'll happen at individual timing, as each has laid out and planned for themselves.
And flowers within that plan.
Right.
So
oh, okay. So I just heard, what do you mean by that? And I would like to answer that for myself in regards to that. What flowers within that plan nudges are buds of flowers, in my view. So, and I used to wander around thinking, okay, well, what the hell, what do I consider a nudge? Because, I'm thinking all the time, and, sometimes I get these ideas of doing something, and so for a long time I was wandering around doing that, and I don't do that so much anymore. I do occasionally still say, okay, well, where is that coming from? Just, depending on what it is or whatever. But I've seen so much recently of how nudges are like I said, the buds of flowers. And it's whether or not they are if they receive enough water and sunlight, I suppose.
Nurture.
Really. Yeah. Whether or not because it's the kind of, all of a sudden I saw like a little bud that would when once bursting forth actually can either tip over a domino that starts another sort of thing that will bud off somewhere else or whatever. That it's just it's very intricate, but it's part of the whole. That's part of the whole, first of all, but it's part of the simple and yet grand and complex design of all
of the flower of life.
Yeah. Yes, of all of it. And so I think that kind of goes for me in hand with the whole of our being decoders.
Yes.
Because decoding when, all of that, being open to all of that is what is really going on here.
Yeah, well, you allow the bud to bloom. You allow the bud to bloom and produce the pollen and the nectar, which attracts the symbiotic relationship of the hummingbird and the butterflies and all that, that then pollinate other things so that there can be more seeds, that so that you can have the different buds, the health of the plant and all of that. So you could say, too, in the allowing or not, you could be a thrip. If you allow your nudge and you follow your nudge and you behold it and go, oh, right? Not, well, that's stupid, or I'm busy, or what you don't understand, whatever that is. The bud can blast. You've seen somebody, you watch its bud, it's getting, waxy and maybe a little, depending on the variety of the plant, like with peonies, when the ants are coming, that's because there's a symbiotic relationship to all of that and the bud gets bigger, but sometimes it will blast. Not following your nudge is at these different moments or different nudges. Maybe you did a couple and so this peony bud is getting nice and you can see it and it's robust and it's showing its color and all of these kinds of things. You got some ants going because they're doing their whole dance with that. And then there are a couple that you didn't follow or you got distracted or you thought, well, that didn't work or whatever. And the bud blasted. Or you can have some, again, with the frequency that you're predominantly holding in your nudges and how you're playing and engaging and meeting and countering and connecting. You can in the scope of your allowing, in the frequency of your allowing, in the dance moves with your quasi allowing all of this to come forth, you can be a thrip, which is a is a tiny little bug, we'll say, that affects a whole host of different blooms. So that fits with the different nudges and each individual being and all that kind of stuff is a good metaphor. And it affects it so that the bud may start to bloom a little, but it never reaches its potential. So some, some color shows forth. You may have some of the petals come out, but not all of it. You may have where they're little tiny blotches and marks and that. So again, this is a good metaphor in this flowering because we are the ones who are the gardener and the plant and the life force within that allows all of that. So you could say, well, yeah, the deer came by and ate a bunch of my leaves, so well, yes, but you're still in the allowing because you are the ultimate power within all of this. That's who each one of us is. That's this singularity that we are all, now transforming into and what's occurring. And so again, nudge to state that this is metaphor. Yes. This is allegory. Yes. This is literal. Yes. This is tangible, physical reality in your multidimensionality that is showing. So that literal, and then in all of the other things that you are either allowing to its fullest, kind of, sort of, or not, in your, and various iterations thereof, in your flowering, in your becoming, in your metamorphosis and transformation and evolution in the quantum nature of birthing, becoming, and holding that singularity, which is coming forth, which is already you to some, coming forth to others, and in the distance, albeit being held at bay. You know, you've been in the armory and you picked up some other swords and you're, keeping it away from yourself, kind of thing. So fear is the fear is the armory where you've gotten these other swords to deflect. You may have maces, may have battle axes, depending on, how you're playing, you could be picking up all sorts of different, implements to do that.
Yeah, I've picked up a battle axe or two. Every now and again. But so it's a combination of things, and just like everything else, there will be more than one.
Yeah.
Because it's not a one and done type of thing.
Well, not unless you plan on renouncing your eternalness, in which case, you'll just go back to the no-thingness, that's not accurate, the beginning point, the pool of no-thingness, and come forth again, because energy is eternal too.
Yes, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It can simply move in and out of form. And that is all. And at its most basic level, every single one of us, every single thing we see is energy. And so, yeah.
And besides, it's a whole lot of fun, and there's there's dragons to ride, and they're not the dragons that are painted in the things, but there's magic to be and behold. I mean, I've said it so many times on these different conversations. You are love, and be love. Many beings are being love. It's the Pegasus that you leap aboard and ride, and you streak across the sky, and you dive to the depths of the heart of the sea. It's our choice.
Yeah, okay. Wow, I just saw something else too. It doesn't pertain to this conversation, but I'm sorry. Well, I've got nothing else. It came in, but it left, so I apologize for that. Is there anything else that either one of you want to add to this one, though?
No, this was very enjoyable for me. Thank you, BZ, for that. And this was really a lot for me. I loved it.
Well, all right. Well, we'll have, all the usual things and all the usual places in the show more section of this video. I am going to include a trailer to this movie. Well, I also thought that it was kind of interesting that this movie is coming out just 7 days after the lunar eclipse. And so I thought there was, I don't know, that for some reason it felt like there was something in there for me in that. And I'm not quite sure what that is, but I thought it was interesting nonetheless. Mm-hmm. So there will be, like I said, a link to the trailer for that video, for that movie that's coming out January 27th. Not that I'm, promoting that or anything, but I just thought it was very interesting. That's
Did you say the 27th?
Yes, it's the 27th, BZ. Yes, I know. BZ has a thing with the 27th. So I thought it was quite interesting myself. Like I said, that's...
And then the email from BZ with this. So that was pretty cool.
I know, right? It was all on the same day.
And I have always been attracted to that story. The Camelot and the Arthur and the Merlin and the dragons.
All right.
Yeah. Delicious.
So, well, thank you both so much, and I guess till next time.
Much love.